Today we're doing a talent tree review from Star Wars Force and Destiny, the Seeker sourcebook. Okay, so the Executioner specialization is a big old damage dealer through and through, and in the same vein as the Bounty Hunter Assassin from the Edge Core book, and maybe also the Sharpshooter from the Age Soldier Career, that core book, in the sense that there's a bigger emphasis on burst damage, lots of damage, but not necessarily every hit. It's not always consistent because of the way it's set up. In fact, maybe more so in this tree than in those other trees. Those ones had a bit more consistent damage dealing potential than this one does. In fact, I would say there's really only one talent that consistently helps you with your damage, and even then it doesn't actually work on every enemy. It depends on how they're statted out. Anyway, damage dealer through and through, focusing on burst and crits. Okay, so let's get into the detail. First of all, talents with conflict costs. Okay, so conflict, I don't think I've done my morality video yet, so I haven't really touched on it much, but with conflict, it's in the Force and Destiny morality system, where it ranges from 0 to 100, and the higher that score is, the more morality points you have, the closer you are to the light side. And throughout each session, each Force user has a chance of gaining conflict points, which go away at the end of the session, but before that, they modify a roll which determines whether or not you gain or lose morality points. The more conflict you gain over the course of the session, the more likely you are to lose morality points at the end of the session, and therefore get closer to the dark side. And some talents in the game are just inherently dark. They're so vicious that merely the knowledge of knowing how to do them, these particular techniques, earns you conflict every session. Just by buying that talent, you get at least one conflict, or whatever the cost may be. Does it change? I don't think it changes. It may depend on the specific talent, how much conflict it costs. Be sure to read the expanded descriptions in the new talents section, or the talent section of the book. Anytime you get a new talent, cannot say that enough. So, Terrifying Kill is the big conflict-costing talent you'll get in this tree. Just the fact that you know how to make a quote-unquote terrifying kill, and big air quotes on that one because it doesn't really necessarily have to be a kill shot in order for you to gain the benefit of Terrifying Kill, but just knowing how to do so adds one conflict point every session. So, make sure to keep that in mind before you buy it. Anyway, Terrifying Kill, sometimes when you make an attack, you can strike fear into the hearts of people around the person being attacked. You attack someone, and then bad stuff happens to people around him, or potentially, depending on how the attack itself goes. In fact, debuffing and buffing is also another core aspect to this character. Not just high damage, but helping out your teammate under certain circumstances. Not to a huge extent, but still adds a bit of variety. But let's move on to those, because those are the funnest ones. Okay, so we got two active talents, Hunter's Quarry and Marked for Death. They both improve the attacks of you and your allies against enemies, sometimes specific enemies, sometimes not, and they do so in different ways, also under different circumstances. One you could do all the time, and you probably should be as soon as you get it, sort of your bread and butter, and you can do it while attacking, which is great. So you should do that. The other has a range requirement, which isn't going to happen all that often. You either have to plan an ambush at that specific range, or you have to get lucky, and they run away and you wait for them to get to that range, or when they eventually get to that range, then you can activate it and get the benefit of that talent. However, if they do get to that range, odds are, unless it's a big open desert or something, they've zigged and zagged a little bit behind cover. You know, you're not going to have line of sight, so it's kind of pointless at that point. So mostly it's for ambushes. You and your buddies doing group sniper, guerrilla tactics, sneaking out of a forest, taking out sentries and guards on an Imperial base, retreating, doing it again on the other side, thinning out the herd until you finally make your way in, or any other kind of longer range ambush you can think of. There's also an improved version to make it even better, which is nice. Alright, so that's all the cool stuff. Oh no, wait, we also have a talent that allows you to add certain results to your attack checks. So that's pretty great. In fact, one of the other buffs also allows you to add certain results to checks. Those two talents are going to be huge for you. In fact, they synergize with some of the other talents we have. Okay, now let's move on to the more basic stuff. The quick strike, quick draw combination, I know I've mentioned multiple times with, I don't know, one or two of the smugglers, the assassin, over and over. Basically, with quick draw, you can just draw your pistol, don't have to spend a maneuver at the beginning, which means you can spend that maneuver on other things. Activating a buff, or moving in the right position, aiming, both of those could potentially affect your dice pool to where you attack better. You also could pull out a stim pack as an incidental or any other item you need, which is nice, but for the most part, at least as far as damage is concerned, only really affects you on that turn. Also really only affecting you on that turn is quick strike, where you attack better when you're attacking someone who hasn't attacked yet. Which also, I hadn't really thought about this before, technically, if someone did something to lock an enemy down, if they hadn't attacked, well then you could get benefit of quick strike. Not just attack, you have to make sure that they don't act at all, otherwise you're not going to get the benefits of quick strike. Even if you do get the benefits of quick strike, first, second round, however many times you're able to pull it off, it's not really that huge, but still, it can be helpful if you really want to start a fight right. That very first attack, have this guy do it, or someone else with a similar build. That can be a big benefit. Just take out a big boss man or important person right away, or whittle them down as much as you can right away. Other talents that will help with that are more than a few talents that will help you with your critical injury attacks, doing more severe crits. We also have the ability to get past some of their defensive capabilities when you're making an attack, which is the only real consistent offensive talent this tree has. And speaking of inconsistent offense, there is a talent that allows you to, with a pretty high cost, add a big chunk of damage onto your attack. Like I said, maximizing your offense for that one big first hit, not a bad way to go. Now, defensively speaking, there's not much. There's a bit of grit, some toughened. It's okay, nothing great. On the lower to average side for a combat tree, mostly it's offense. The best defense is a strong offense in the case of this character. And lastly, to finish off the tree, we have a talent with a pretty sizable cost, but when you do it, it can help you with some strain management, which is always useful, especially when you're aiming as much as you can, moving into the best position. That's going to help do the maximum amount of damage, which is why you exist. Okay, so building an Executioner. Here's the thing about this as a combat tree, is that most of its talents don't necessarily align themselves with a particular skill, melee or ranged or whatever. You can do either. In fact, only one talent really deals with any specific type of attack skill. Beyond that, which is not really that big of a deal, beyond that, you can be melee or ranged. Really, it's just based off of the career skills that you get. Of course, you get ranged heavy because it's a seeker, which, by the way, you can double up on, but also you get melee as a career skill. Now, you can definitely do either. Either is perfectly viable. My recommendation would be ranged heavy because you don't really have a lot of great defenses, which, if you're a melee character, you're probably going to want. And so if you go melee, well, of course you're going to have a high brawn, so I guess that will help you defensively. I would definitely go for a 4 brawn, just to make up for the fact that there are no real defensive talents. But it's certainly more efficient to go agility based if that's what you want to do. So a 4 in agility, great way to go. Either way, whatever combat stat you do, go for a 4. Although because they have so many combat talents, like I've said before, you could sort of go in the opposite direction. Go with like a 3 in your combat stat and allow your talents to focus on it. But most people are just going to want to go balls to the wall, go all out on damage, and a 4 in your combat stat is one of the best trees to do it in. Why not? Even with a 4 in your combat stat, what else are you going to put your points into? Gives you a bit of flexibility here. Will is the only thing that's even remotely mentioned in your tree, so I guess will. But beyond that, just whatever you want. Actually, because it's so combat focused, if you go ranged heavy, you're probably also going to want some decent brawn so you don't die. So it might actually be more efficient to go full on melee. I don't know. It's a coin toss. Whatever sounds cooler. Either way, probably a 4-3 in those, because you can switch off. Why limit yourself? 4-3, agility and brawn, whichever tickles your fancy. But more importantly than whether you go ranged or melee, whatever you do, make sure you get weapon or 2 weapons if you're dual wielding, a dual-headed weapon, auto fire, whatever style of weaponry you're using, make sure it can attack more than once. And also has decent crit stats, vicious or whatever. because that's kind of its big thing. The more hits you can get, the more critical hits you can get, and crits are a big thing with the Executioner. There's lots of synergy that really helps it get a lot of crits, but you need to get a lot of hits. So whatever allows you to attack more than once or hit more than once, great option for the Executioner. So yeah, really great tree, pretty straightforward, great for any force-using bounty hunter or gladiator type character or whatever else you want to make. Alright,